This is a story. It's a story of how a small instrument manufacturer in Sweden won me over. A manufacturer whose instruments were barely on the map back in the 90s and 2000s.
Today I would like to explore this map.
Their strange-looking knobs in red color were foreign to me, and I never would have given them a second look. This is a story about Nord. A bunch of hieroglyphics. White blinking lights. Back in the early 2000s when I first started getting into keyboards, I had no idea what a Nord even was. And I don't think Guitar Center did either.
Oh.
Because if you walked into any keyboard room at the Guitar Center, on one wall you would have your typical Yamahas and your Rolands, and on the opposite wall you'd have pretty much 18 different versions of the Korg Triton. And the Korg Triton was really it. I mean, that was the instrument of the day. You could hit that arpeggiator button, hold down one key, and you sounded amazing. I was obsessed with the guitar at that time, but being able to play a couple of notes or a chord and sound like a full band all of a sudden became way more interesting. Pretty much any keyboard player that was worth their salt was sporting a Triton Studio on stage. It was hard not to feel like this was the instrument to have. Even after playing keyboard for 5 or 10 years though, Nord never really made an impression on me because they seemed to be behind the curve. As a smaller company, they likely did not have the technical prowess of the big three in their earlier years. And when you're in the market for a keyboard, technical prowess is a huge selling point. Historically, Nord didn't even have a workstation synth to compete with the Tritons and Phantoms of the world. Even today, their flagship Stage 4 doesn't compete with the industry-leading Korg Kronos or Phantom 8 on paper. Finally, Nords are typically on the higher end of the market if you're thinking about price, and I'm all about that price-performance curve. Especially nowadays, as some of the new low-cost mini synths have some pretty stellar capabilities. And if you want to hit that perfect budget price point, just pick up a couple of decent $20, $50, or $100 soft synths. I mean, in this golden era, you can drop anywhere between $500 and $1,000 on a bunch of soft synths and effects, and you're going to sound pretty amazing. In fact, you would probably blow away any musician in any previous era to this one, which is why I think expensive synths are now becoming a luxury item. And really, that's the market that Nord's going for. Look at the recently released Stage 4, a mere $59.99. That is well outside the purchasing range of a majority of musicians. Compare that to the Roland Phantom 8, which sells for $4,200, or the ever so slightly updated Korg Kronos at $4,000. If you're looking at the price versus performance curves of keyboards, Nord is pretty far off the beaten path. If you wanted to buy a Korg Triton Studio in the early 2000s, it would set you back about $3,000 to $3,500. And those things had 7 slots in them for expansion cards that ran about $100 to $300 a piece. So if you wanted to fill all 7 slots, it would run you somewhere around $5,000, which is about $9,000 in today's money. It seems like keyboard prices haven't changed much. One of the reasons I bought a Triton was the options. I mean, the thing is loaded. It's got a song mode, it's got arpeggiators, a drum machine, thousands of patches. The Nord, on the other hand, it's a much different instrument. A lot less options, and some people think their red color is kind of gaudy looking. So why exactly did I buy one? Well, it started at a party, and it was the first time I had actually seen a Nord keyboard in person. But I didn't see it first, I heard it. I was at this modern retro 2-story bar years ago, and this 3-piece that I kind of sort of knew was setting up on stage. I was up at the balcony level, and these guys were all top-notch musicians, you know, jazz trio. And I was in this conversation, and the band started up, and when the keyboard player came in, I stopped the conversation immediately, walked over to the edge of the balcony to see exactly what he was playing because it cut through the mix and sounded absolutely fantastic. Much better than the piano and Rhodes sounds that I had on the Korg Triton. So I watched him for 4 or 5 minutes, and then some people came up to me and started a conversation again. And since I wasn't in the market for an instrument at the time, I kind of just sort of forgot about it. Then about 2 years ago, I needed to do a lot of research on digital pianos because our church was going to upgrade our 20-plus-year-old and definitely mediocre digital Yamaha. So I spent hours of time scouring the internet for different options. This was all in preparation to visit Sweetwater to try out as many digital pianos as I could in a day. And the funny thing is, Nord wasn't even on the list because I thought they were too expensive. That is, until I saw the Nord Grand in the corner. Unlike its other red siblings, the all-wood Grand was really beautiful and striking compared to its black and white competition. Not only that, the sound and feel of the Grand were top-notch, beaten only slightly by the Yamaha SY88 sitting next to it. Of the two, however, I ended up spending a lot more time playing the Nord Grand, which was weird because the Yamaha was considerably cheaper. The price-performance curve was starting to melt away. When I got back home from Sweetwater, I put together a giant comparison spreadsheet because, although I favored the Nord, this wasn't a personal keyboard for me, even though I would be playing it every week. In the end, the Grand scored higher than the competition because it had two features that most of the other instruments didn't have, and that was the ability to load your own samples, which is fantastic, and a good pipe organ. I mean, if you're going to play in a church, you got to have a good pipe organ, and the Grand had several. That was actually huge because now I could sample and import several more pipe organ, vocal, and pad samples from some really great VSTs that I owned and customize this into an incredible instrument. The big problem, however, was still the price. The $4,200 at the time was pretty steep, especially considering the number 2 and 3 instruments on the list were the Yamaha YC88 and Roland RD2000, both of which were around $2,700. That's $1,500 less, and frankly the price of another pretty decent keyboard. That price-performance curve thing was rearing its ugly head. Thus, I turned to the used market. After about 3 months or so, I eventually found a pretty good deal from a guitar center in California that included this $700 really expensive wood legs and music stand for around $3,200. And lucky me, I got to enjoy the keyboard for a number of months and take my time setting up dozens and dozens of custom patches. The problem was when I finally moved the piano out of my studio and into the church, it left a really big hole. And I mean, it was a hole that was only going to be filled with another Nord Grand. When I first started playing, I had a pretty cheap piano. It was okay. But when I bought a Korg Triton, it made me want to play every day. I was excited about playing. And I had the same exact experience with the Nord. And so only another Nord was gonna do. So I scoured the used market again. And it only took me about 2 or 3 months before I ended up finding a really fantastic deal on an almost mint condition replacement. It took me 30 plus years to realize this. When we bought the Nord, we bought it based on a specific list of features for a specific use case, not necessarily the price-performance curve. But when it came time for me to buy a piano for myself, I didn't really care about the price-performance curve or the features. I had bonded with this instrument, and I would argue that bonding with an instrument requires 3 things. Number 1, you have to like how an instrument looks. Some people love the look of these worn-out guitars. I think they look like worn-out guitars. But if you really like how an instrument looks, you're really going to want to pick it up and play it. And a lot of musicians, I think, would argue that looks don't matter. I disagree. I think that they do matter for a lot of people. Remember, somewhere around 60% of people buy a book based on the cover, and poor cover design is one of the most common reasons for low book sales. Tone, tone, tone. Obviously, as musicians, we know this is the most important thing. There are endless videos on YouTube about guitar players chasing guitar tone and amp tone. And as an example, I have 5 guitars and I play one of them about 85% of the time because it's got the best tone. Finally, feel is probably just as important as tone. You've heard me go on about keyboard action. I would never buy a Korg Kronos with weighted keys because I hate the feel of it. It sounds great, but it just doesn't feel right. Their synth action, on the other hand, is phenomenal. I love the Nord action, but some people don't like it. And if you don't like it, you're not going to play it. So essentially what I think Nord got right is the feel and the tone aspect of the instrument. I mean, the reason that you buy a high-end Gibson or a PRS or a Fender Custom Shop is for those 2 reasons. It's the tone, it's the feel of the instrument. It's that extra 10% that's put in that makes these things worth a lot more money. And I think Nord did a great job with the Grand. The Nord Grand made me want to play every day. Really want to play. And I finally come to realize it's not always about the specs. Specs don't say anything about how you're going to connect with an instrument, or why some people fall in love with a Prophet while others fall in love with an Oberheim. To these people, the instrument that they play is beautiful, and they would not give it up, even for something newer or shinier or with better specs. So if you're searching for that perfect fit or that perfect tone, keep searching. I mean, life's supposed to be a journey, right? Not a destination. So enjoy it. And to Nord, I want to say thanks because I think I found my perfect fit. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. Hit that like and subscribe, and I will see you on the other side of the mountain.